Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to talk to you tonight about how to talk to children about food, energy, and health. And I'm going to begin. Okay. Hang on a second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so we have to watch everything we talk to when we talk. We have to watch what we say when we talk to our children. Hang on a second, I'm just gonna move something around. Okay, because my picture is in where my screen is. Okay. Your words that you use when you speak in front of your children are very powerful. And what you say will affect their quality of life, their mental health, and self-esteem. The way you talk to your child will eventually affect how he or she thinks and speaks to themselves and really set them up for future failures or success. You're helping them shape their inner voice or the way they talk to themselves. We call it an inner critic in psychology. Your goal as a parent is to teach them to have an inner voice that speaks kindly and gently. Remember, so many of you have your own beliefs about health, wellness, food, eating habits, and bodies, and you can pass them all forward. So before I get into what I want to talk to you about, I just want to talk to you about obesity today. I am an obesity medicine specialist, so I can't give a talk without mentioning it just for at least one slide. And I think it's important because I think there's a reason why this topic is so hot. I think that whenever we hear about obesity in the news or see children with obesity, it sort of creates an anxiety within us. And as a parent, we feel like we're responsible, and it's deemed as a negative thing in our society. So we feel that we're responsible. We need to do something about it. So with that, most parents have very good intentions when they talk to their children, but they don't realize that sometimes they can actually cause more damage than good. So obesity today in the United States is about 20% of the kids in our country. It is increasing despite all of the healthy foods and products that are on the shelves. And when I'm asked about what causes obesity, it's a very complex interaction of different things. So the way I like to describe it is that the genetics really load the gun, and your environment, your behaviors, and your nutrition is really what pulls the trigger. So for all of us that have been genetically sort of loaded, we can do something, and that is we can change the environment and we can change like the way we interact with our children. So I think today we're going to talk about some really important concepts of what you could do. Another thing I just wanted to mention is eating disorders are also on the rise. And a lot of the eating disorders that I see are really secondary to restriction that has been enforced inside the household as a child. So you really want to be careful when dealing with food and your kids. And I'm going to talk about that tonight. I want to make sure that you guys are all prepared to deal with your kids and to prevent these things from happening. So the objective tonight for my talk is that I would like to give you tools in order for you to speak to your child so they develop a healthy relationship with food, eating, and their bodies. And I came up with 15 different tips on how to speak to your child, or it could be your grandchild, or it could be somebody you're taking care of, in order to set them up for a healthy life. So let's begin. Okay, so tip number one, start talking to your child about food and their body and health very early. So kids start thinking about their weight and appearance as early as 3 years old. So it's never too early to start talking to them. We want to teach them about body respect in addition to being healthy and food. And we want to teach them that their body never needs to be fixed. Because if you tell a child that they have to change their body, it's really going to set them up for body dissatisfaction. Girls believe about dieting and weight are often learned from their mothers. That's their first person that they are in contact with. So a lot of times when a girl sees their mother dieting all the time and talking about their weight, they're going to learn those behaviors from their mother. Tip number two. It's all about health and well-being. not weight. You never want to talk to your kid about weight. You never want to mention that they should lose weight or gain weight. You should never talk about a number on the scale. Studies show that they are more likely to have a higher BMI, which is body mass index, and a poor body image, and feel very dissatisfied with their weight. So you should never talk to a child that eating a certain food will make them fat or gain weight or lose weight. You should teach your kids the purpose to eat and move your body is for energy and to feel good. You should never teach your child that they should be moving their body because they need to burn calories for something they ate. We want to talk about how some foods give us more energy and nutrients and others give us less. And we need to get foods with energy so we can do sports and we can run fast and be strong. And we really want to zone into what your bodies can do, not what your bodies look like. So in essence, we want to build a positive body image. We want to talk to them about like how strong their arms are, or how fast they can run, or how deep their lungs can breathe, or how clever their brain is, rather than how big their stomach looks or how big their thighs look. Tip number 3, how to talk to your kids about food. Okay, so this is really important. The way we talk about food around our kids is the way they will think about food forever. So talking about foods in the wrong way can set them up for a lifetime of struggling with food, weight cycling, which is yo-yo dieting, a negative body image, anxiety, and depression. So we want to teach our kids that food is just fuel for our bodies, just like gasoline is fuel for a car. We want to teach them that all foods fit. We want to teach them that the better the fuel, they can think better, feel better, and perform at your best. We want to talk about foods that they should eat to nourish their body, not ones that they should avoid. And we want to try to encourage our kids to eat all colors of the rainbow to get all their nutrients we need in order for them to go strong and healthy. You want to talk about and serve your child nutritious foods from the start. So you want to start, habits start very young. So if you start your child off with giving them juices and ice cream every night, then they're going to get used to these things. So you want to start all these things from the beginning. Tip number 4, it's very important to teach your kids about their appetite. So we like to teach our kids about the purpose of hunger. And we explain it that it's the body's way of telling us that it's time to eat. So you should teach your kid how to tune into their hunger. You should always be asking them, are you hungry or are you just in the mood to eat? If a child tells you they're hungry and they want to eat, you can never tell a child that they can't be hungry. It's not possible. You just ate something. You can't say that to a child. You don't know how they're feeling. The child really may be hungry. And if you dismiss them, then they are going to feel very insecure with food and they are going to be eating food without you and trying to sneak food. So the best way to handle that is you can ask if they want food. And if they say they want food, you can say like, are you hungry or do you feel bored? That's a way of getting them to think about their hunger and their appetite. Whatever you do, don't encourage the clean plate club and don't praise your child for cleaning or for finishing their plate. It really teaches your child to ignore their natural hunger and appetite cues, and they want the praise. They like that you're telling them like, oh, good, you cleaned your plate. So they'll start cleaning their plate even when they're not hungry in order to get the praise. You can say to a child, if you notice your child is eating a lot that day or not eating a lot that day, you can raise awareness to your child and say, oh, it seems like you're really hungry today, or it seems like you're not so hungry today. But you can never say you can't be hungry to them, even if they're having a very hungry day. Okay, tip number 5. And this is a really important one. And All parents should be good role models. Kids are constantly watching and listening to you. They're sponges. So everything you say, everything you do, they're watching. So you want to teach them how to live a healthy lifestyle. You want to teach them that it's okay to have a dessert. Maybe not every night, but it's okay to have a dessert. You want to teach them what it's like to exercise for enjoyment. And you want to show them that you eat bright and colorful vegetables at meal times and fruits. Tip number 6, update your food language. This is something I teach to all of my patients right from the beginning. I think it's really, really important. When we talk to our kids about foods, it's not a good idea to talk about food that's good or bad. We really want to try to neutralize food. So we don't want to talk that a food is a treat or a junk. We don't want to give it any moral value. So from the beginning, I always tell my patients, like, bad foods like a brownie or like a cookie that people tend to think of as bad foods, they're not bad. And it's not a crime that a child eats a brownie. Brownies are delicious, or cookies are delicious. The only way a food could be bad is if it was spoiled, rotten, or moldy. So it's really important to really, instead of saying good foods or bad foods, I like to phrase it that it's a sometimes food or an everyday foods, but really all foods fit. We never want to label anything as bad, because once you label that a food is bad, the child can start thinking that they're bad or they're doing something wrong by eating that food. And again, I think I say it very good here, that assigning foods a moral value, like being good or bad, can really perpetuate prejudice and stigma, and really results in feelings of shame, and can lead to depression, anxiety, negative body image, weight cycling. And it's really important, again, to use neutral language that describes the properties of food. So you don't want to say it's good or bad. You can just say, describe how it is. It's a fruit. It's a vegetable. You can talk about carrots, how it will help your eyesight and stuff like that. You can ask your child what they're hungry for, because we want them to learn to listen to their body's built-in ability to tell them what they do want. So you can ask them what they're hungry for, and but you can never say that that's a bad thing. Okay, I just wanted to kind of follow up with that last slide. I just wanted to give you some examples of phrases that you may say without realizing that you should not be saying. So just say, for example, your child ate much more than you thought that they should have eaten. You don't want to say to your child, did you really just eat all that food? Because by you saying that, you're making them feel very guilty, like they did something wrong. And they're going to have that guilt and shame feeling and uneasiness. Or if, you notice, if your child is asking for more food, you can't say, how can you still be hungry? A better thing to say would be, are you hungry, or do you just feel bored, or does it taste really good? Instead of saying, do you really need a dessert? Obviously, nobody needs a dessert. And by you saying that, it's making the child feel like that they're doing something wrong by asking for a dessert. And another thing that you could say that is not good is, wow, you're really eating a lot today. So by you saying that, it's making them feel like they're doing something wrong by listening to their appetite and listening to what they feel. So these are some things that I put down here that you can say instead of those words. And I think I gave you some examples as I was going through them, but how does your tummy feel? And are you really still hungry? If you can actually tell your child that if they are still hungry, then that's okay to eat more, because it's your body's way of telling you can have more. By the way, one thing I do tell my patients, I didn't put it here, but if your child has eaten a meal and they're still hungry, I usually suggest that my patients wait a little before they have a second portion, because it does take at least 10 to 15 minutes for the signal to get to your brain that you're actually full. And a lot of times kids are impulsive and they want to eat immediately. But if you could just tell them, you could eat more, but why don't we wait a little bit to see if the message gets from your tummy to your brain. And that's that's a good tip to use with your children. The other thing is, again, and I think I mentioned it earlier, you can say, are you really still hungry, or do you think you want more because it was really yummy? And then see what they answer. Okay, next tip. I just want to talk about Ellen Satter, who is a famous nutritionist, and she really talks about what the responsibilities of a parent and a child should do. And I think this is really important. I go by her advice, and I like to, talk about her at every talk and with all of my parents. And her stance is that there's a job for the parents, like a responsibility for the parent and the child. And the parent's responsibility is to serve, what they want to serve, when they want to serve it, and where they want to serve it. But you really need to allow your child to decide how much they're going to eat and even whether they're going to eat. So this is a really important and I tell all my patients to follow this, and parents. So really, parents need to trust their child, and your child needs to be able to decide how much they want to eat, and they should be able to determine how much they want to eat from what the parents are going to provide. And the key is, when parents do their jobs with the feeding, the children can do their job with the eating. And sometimes it's okay for your child to overeat a little bit and learn that when they eat too much, then they have a stomach ache, or they might not feel that well. Sometimes kids need that feedback loop in order to learn how to eat. Okay, tip number 8, no food rules. So any rule that is associated with food is not healthy. Never, never, never. So it really moralizes food and can lead to guilt and shame, and we don't want that. So the more rules and the more restrictions you have in your household, we see more disordered eating. So some examples of rules that I've seen in my practice are that kitchen closes at a certain time of the night. And if a child gets hungry, say at 8 o'clock at night, the parent says no eating because kitchen is closed. This really encourages kids to eat before the kitchen closes, because they get nervous that they're going to get hungry once the kitchen is closed. A lot of parents say that it's not okay to eat before bed. I always say that's a rule, because now you're getting your child to think about it, that they can't eat before bed. So again, it's okay to have 2 snacks. Some parents come out and say that you're only allowed to have 1 snack when you come home from school. Let your kids have what they want, and, don't have any rules about that. It's okay to eat your meals at different times. You want to always listen to your body. It's okay to have a cookie or 2. There's nothing wrong with these things. You really want to allow your kids to experience, and I think I said this earlier, but I'm saying it again, you want to allow your kids to experience that sick feeling you get from eating too much of something, because it will really help build their internal feedback loop, so they could learn to regulate themselves. This is really important. Tip number 9, ditch diets and diet culture. So this is so important. You don't want to talk about diets to your children. You don't want to tell your child you're on a diet, and you never want to put your child on a diet. Diets are associated with weight gain and weight cycling, depressive symptoms, feelings of worthlessness, self-harm, and really set themselves up for an unhealthy relationship with food. We're living in a culture right now that believes that being obese is bad and unhealthy, and that's not always true. Yes, obesity definitely increases your risk of being unhealthy, but it doesn't mean that every single person with obesity is unhealthy. We are living in a culture where certain foods and food groups and ingredients are labeled as good or bad. And again, I can't say it more, like, you cannot talk about food as being good or bad. And instead of saying good or bad foods, I like to talk about someday foods and everyday foods. And I think I talked about that a little earlier. Okay, tip number 10. We really want to celebrate all body types and destigmatize weight and all bodies and shapes. So people can be healthy at all different sizes. You want to teach your kids that people come in all shapes and sizes, and some are tall, some are short, some have big feet, and some have small feet. We want to remind them then when people die that we remember them for what they have accomplished, not for their size or their shoe size. And you want to try to comment on other things other than size. You talk about somebody's kindness, intelligence, their thoughtfulness, their generosity. You want to teach body respect and not body shaming. I just want to bring up right now, I think it's really important to not judge other people when you're with your kids. So if you notice that one of the moms gained a lot of weight, you don't want to bring that attention to your child. Or if you notice that the neighbor gained a lot of weight or even lost a lot of weight, you don't want to be talking about that in front of your child, because it teaches them that you're judgmental and that if they gain weight or if something is wrong with them, that you're going to be judging them. And it also teaches them that that's how society is, that people are all judgy and they're going to feel like they need to be perfect all the time because people are always going to be judging them. So it's really important that even if you yourself were brought up and have some sort of an disordered eating or distorted, something with your own weight, you really don't want to talk about that in front of your child. Okay, again, avoid criticizing your weight and appearance. So I think I just said this, judging and commenting on other people's bodies can be harmful to your child. So some other examples I just put down here that you may say in front of your child. Maybe you're on the phone with one of your friends, maybe you're talking to your husband or whatever you say, but your children will listen to you. So little things, I'm going to give you examples of these things, are not good things to say in front of your child. So you don't want to say like, oh, I was so good this week, or I was so bad this week on my diet. Or you don't want to say I cheated on my diet, or I shouldn't have eaten that, or definitely I feel so fat, or I'm not going to fit into that dress. Or you never want to look in front of the mirror and say you look fat in front of your child, because then they're going to start doing these things and they're going to start feeling insecure. So you, again, try to speak to yourself with kind words, especially in front of your children. Tip number 12, don't fight with your kids. So when parents try to control how much food and whether a child eats, we see conflict arising. Again, this is what Ellen Satter said, like, don't try to control how much food or whether the child eats. If a child doesn't want to eat broccoli, you can't force them. You don't want to have a whole like war at the table. You have to respect what they have to say. They are going to decide whether or not they eat something, and they are going to decide how much they're going to eat. Creating pressure around food can lead to children ignoring their own natural hunger cues. Encouraging a child to eat more or less than their appetite says they need can disrupt their own internal feelings of hunger and fullness. And honestly, fighting doesn't get you anywhere. It just perpetuates a negative relationship with food and the whole eating experience. It's okay to ask your kids, like, what do you want me to buy at the supermarket? Or what do you want to eat for dinner? Or what kinds of snacks do you want me to get? It's better to have their input. If they are really in the mood for some sort of a dinner and you buy it for them, then obviously they're going to want to eat it. But if, you definitely don't want to force anything, and don't fight with your kids about food. Tip number 13, don't use food as a reward. This is really important because you're sending mixed messages. On the one hand, you're teaching your kids that healthy foods are good for you, and that has the rewards in itself. But then when your child does something good, you reward them with something that you usually downplay as a reward. So it's really important, of course, reward your child when they do something good, but don't reward it with food. When a food is offered as a reward, it creates a sense of urgency and scarcity, which may cause kids to eat more or even indulge when they don't really want it just because it's available. And also, it plants ideas that some foods need to be earned, and this can lead to the opposite idea, which is that some foods need to be worked off if you've eaten them. Tip number 14, make social media a topic of conversation. So, children today are more vulnerable than ever to damaging messages and body image pressure. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends you limit screen time to less than 2 hours a day. And it's really important that you explain to your child that most of what they are seeing is edited and unattainable. And because kids compare themselves to people they see on social media all the time, and they don't necessarily know that. As adults, we know there's all these editing tools, and a lot of the celebrities have gotten all kinds of plastic surgery and lasers and everything like that. But when kids see this every day and all their different TikToks and Instagram, they start feeling really bad about themselves. So it's something you should definitely talk about with your child. Okay, tip number 15, how to handle a picky eater. So I know it's very frustrating when you have a picky eater. Sometimes parents spend a lot of time preparing food and dinner, thinking that, if they stick in some vegetables and different things, that their kids are going to eat it. And the truth is, kids are picky and they're going to decide what they're going to eat. And it's really important that you don't beg your child, you don't negotiate, like, just please have one more bite. You don't want to say, if you eat your greens, then you're going to get a dessert. You really want to just encourage your child to eat more or less than, you don't want to encourage your child to eat more or less than what their appetite is saying. Because if you do, it really can disrupt their internal feelings of hunger and fullness. So let your kids eat what they want. By you bargaining with them, it's not going to work. You're going to be more frustrated, and it's going to create more pressure at the dinner table. So in summary, it's really important that you update your food language. Again, we talked about no good or bad foods. You should not be using those words in the house anymore. Instead, you can use a sometimes food and an everyday foods. And remember, all foods fit. There's nothing wrong with carbohydrates. There's nothing wrong with sweets. But again, those types of things, carbohydrates are everyday foods. But some of the sweets, are more of a someday foods. But we don't have to eliminate any kind of food groups. Role modeling healthy eating and a positive relationship with food and your body are the most powerful things you can do to support your child. Avoid any kind of shaming comments about your weight, appearance, or body, or your child's. Support kids to tune into their own internal hunger and fullness cues. And don't force kids to eat anything, and don't let mealtime become a battleground. And that's it.